Recording by Wayne Cook. Chapter 12. On the March Again with Alan. It was likely between 1 and 2. The moon, as I have said, was down. A strongish wind, carrying a heavy rack of cloud, had set in suddenly from the west, and we began our movement as in black a night as ever a fugitive or a murderer wanted. The whiteness of the path guided us into the sleeping town of Broughton, thence through Picardy, and beside my old acquaintance, the gibbet of the two thieves. A little beyond we made a useful beacon, which was a light in an upper window of Loch End. Steering by this, but a good deal at random, and with some trampling of the harvest and stumbling and falling down upon the banks, we made our way across country, and won forth, boggy at last, upon the linky muirland that they call the Figet Whins. Here, under a brush of whin, we lay down the remainder of that night and slumbered. The day called us about 5. A beautiful morning it was, the high westerly wind still blowing strong, but the clouds all blown away to Europe. Alan was already sitting up and smiling to himself. It was my first sight of my friend since we were parted, and I looked upon him with enjoyment. He had still the same big greatcoat on his back, but what was new, he had now a pair of knitted boot-hose drawn above the knee. Doubtless these were intended for disguise, but as the day promised to be warm, he made a most unseasonable figure. "Well, Davy," said he, "this is no a bonny morning. Here's a day that looks the way that a day ought to. This is a great change of it from the belly of my haystack. And while you were there sottering and sleeping, I have done a thing that maybe I do very seldom." "And what was that?" said I. "Oh, just said my prayers," said he. "And where are my gentry, as ye call them?" I asked. "Good kens," says he, "and the short and the long of it is that we must take our chance of them. Up with your foot-soles, Davy, forth fortune once again of it, and a bonny walk we are like to have." So we went east by the beach of the sea, towards where the salt pans were smoking in by the Esk mouth. No doubt there was a by ordinary bonny blink of morning sun on Arthur's Seat and the green Pentlands, and the pleasantness of the day that peered to set Alan among nettles. "I feel like a gomeril," says he, "to be leaving Scotland on a day like this. It sticks in my head. I would maybe like it better to stay here and hang." "Aye, but ye wunna, Alan," said I. "No, but what France is a good place too," he explained. "But it's some way no the same. It's brawer, I believe, but it's no Scotland. I like it fine when I'm there, man. Yet I kind of weary for Scots divots and the Scots peat-reek." "If that's all you have to complain of, Alan, it's no such great affair," said I. "And it sets me ill to be complaining whatever," said he, "and me but new out of your deil's haystack." "And so you were unco weary of your haystack?" I asked. "Weary's nae word for it," said he. "I'm not just precisely a man that's easily cast down, but I do better with collar air and the lift above my head. I'm like that auld Black Douglas, wasn't it, that liked it better to hear the lever-ox sing than the mouse cheep. And yon place, see, Davy, whilk was a very suitable place to hide in, as I'm free to own, was pit mirk from dawn to gloaming. There were days, or nights, for how would I tell one from other, that seemed to me as long as a long winter. "How did you know the hour to bide your tryst?" I asked.
"The goodman brought me my meat and a drop brandy and a candle dope to eat it by, about 11, said he. "So when I had swallowed a bit, it would be time to be getting to the wood. There I lay and worried for ye sore, Davy,"
says he, laying his hand on my shoulder,
"and guessed when the 2 hours would be about by, unless Charlie Stewart would come and tell me on his watch, and then back to the Doom's haystack. Now it was a rich employ, and praise the Lord that I have wrestled through with it."
"What did you do with yourself?" I asked.
"Faith," said he, "the best I could, whiles I played at the knuckle-bones. I'm an extraordinary good hand at the knuckle-bones, but it's a poor piece of business playing with nebody to admire ye. And whiles I would make songs."
"What were they about?" says I.
"Oh, about the deer and the heather," says he, "and about the ancient old chiefs that are all by with a lang syne, and just about what songs are about in general. And then whiles I would make believe I had a set of pipes, and I was playing. I played some grand springs, and I thought I played them awfully bonny. I vowed whiles that I could hear the squeal of them, but the great affair is that it's done with."
With that he carried me again to my adventures, which he heard all over again with more particularity and extraordinary approval, swearing at intervals that I was a queer character of a callant.
"So ye were friend of Sim Fraser?" he asked me once.
"In troth was I," I cried.
"So would I have been, Davy," said he, "and that is indeed a dreadful man. But it is only proper to give the Dale his due, and I can tell you he is a most respectable person in the field of war."
"Is he so brave?" I asked.
"Brave," said he. "He's as brave as my steel sword."
The story of my duel set him beside himself.
"To think of that!" he cried. "I showed ye the trick in Corniganehie, too, and three times disarmed. It's a disgrace upon my character that learned ye. Here, stand up. Out with your iron. Ye should walk no step beyond this place upon the road till ye can do yourself and me more credit."
"Allen," said I, "this is midsummer madness. Here is no time for fencing lessons."
"I can well say no to that," he admitted. "But 3 times, man, and you standing there like a straw boggle and reining to fetch your ain sword like a doggy with a pocket napkin. David, this man Duncansby must be something altogether by extraordinaire. He mun be extraordinaire skilly. If I had the time, I would gang straight back and try a turn at him myself. The man must be a provost." "Nah," he said, "but 3 times."
"You silly fellow," said I, "you forget it was just me."
"Nah," said he, "but 3 times."
"When ye ken yourself that I am fair incompetent," I cried.
"Well, I never heard tell the equal of it,"
said he. "I promise you the one thing, Allen," said I. "The next time that we foregather, I'll be better learned. You shall not continue to bear the disgrace of a friend that cannot strike."
"Aye, the next time," says he. "And when will that be, I would like to ken?"
"Well, Allen, I have had some thoughts of that too," said I. "And my plan is this. It's my opinion to be called an advocate."
"That's but a weary trade, Davy," says Allen, "and rather a blackguard one for me. Ye would be better in a king's coat than that."
"And no doubt that would be the way to have us met," cried I. But as you'll be in King Louis's coat, and I'll be in King Geordie's, we'll have a dainty meeting of it."
"There's some sense in that," he admitted.
"An advocate, then, it'll have to be," I continued. "And I think it a more suitable trade for gentlemen that was 3 times disarmed. But the beauty of the thing is this, that one of the best colleges for that kind of learning, and the one where my kinsman Pilrig made his studies, is the College of Leyden in Holland. Now, what say you, Alan? Could not a cadet of Royal Ecossais get a furlough, slip over the marshes, and call upon a Leyden student?"
"Well, and I think he could," cried he. "You see, I stand well in with my colonel, Count Drummond Melfort, and what's mair to the purpose, I have a cousin of mine, lieutenant colonel in a regiment of the Scots Dutch. Nothing could be mair proper than what I would get a leave to see Lieutenant Colonel Stewart of Halifax. And Lord Melfort, who is a very scientific kind of a man, and writes books like Caesar, would be doubtless very pleased to have the advantage of my observes."
"Is Lord Melfort an author, then?" I asked, for as much as Alan thought of soldiers, I thought more of the gentry that write books.
"The very same, Davy," said he. "One would think a colonel would have something better to attend to. But what can I say that makes songs?"
"Well, then," said I, "it only remains you should give me an address to write you it in France, and as soon as I am got to Leyden, I will send you mine."
"The best will be to write me in care of my chieftain," said he, "Charles Stewart of Ardshiel, Esquire, in the town of Milon, in the Isle of France. It might take long, or it might take short, but it would I get to my hands at the last of it."
We had a haddock for our breakfast in Musselburgh, where it amused me vastly to hear Alan. His great coat and boot hose were extremely remarkable this warm morning, and perhaps some hint of an explanation had been wise. But Alan went into that matter like a business, or I should rather say like a diversion. He engaged the good wife of the house with some compliments upon the risering of our haddocks, and the whole of the rest of our stay held her in talk about a cold he had taken on his stomach, gravely relating all manner of symptoms and sufferings, and hearing with a vast show of interest all the old wives' remedies she could supply him with in return. We left Musselburgh before the first 9-penny coach was due from Edinburgh, for, as Alan said, that there was a re-encounter we might very well avoid. The wind, although still high, was very mild. The sun shone strong, and Alan began to suffer in proportion. From Prestonpans he had me aside to the field of Glansmere, where he exerted himself a great deal more than needful to describe the stages of the battle. Thence, at his old round pace, we travelled to Cockensie, though they were building herring busses there at Mrs. Caudel's. It seemed a desert-like, back-going town, about half full of ruined houses. But the ale-house was clean, and Alan, who was now in a glowing heat, must indulge himself with a bottle of ale, and carry on to the new lookie with the old story of the cold upon his stomach. Only now the symptoms were all different. I sat listening, and it came to my mind that I had scarce ever heard him address 3 serious words to any woman, but he was always drolling and fleering and making a private mock of them, and yet brought to that business a remarkable degree of energy and interest. Something to this effect I remarked to him when the good wife, as chanced, was called away.
"What do you want?" says he. "A man should aye put his best foot for'ard with the womenkind. He should I give them a bit of a story to divert them, the poor lambs. It's what ye should learn to attend to, David. Ye should get the principles. It's like a trade. Now, if this had been a young lassie, or anyways bonny, she would never have heard tell of my stomach, Davy. Once they're too old to be seeing Joes, they're set up to be apothecaries. Why? Why do I ken? They'll be just the way God made them, I suppose. But I think a man would be a gomeril that didn't give his attention to the same.
And here the Lucky came back. He turned from me as if with impatience to renew their former conversation. The lady had branched some while before from Alan's stomach to the case of a good brother of her own in Aberlady, whose last sickness and demise she was describing at extraordinary length. Sometimes it was merely dull, sometimes both dull and awful, for she talked with unction. The upshot was that I fell in a deep muse, looking forth of the window on the road, and scarcely marking what I saw. Presently, had any been looking, they might have seen me to start.
"We've had a fomentation to his feet," the good wife was saying, "and a headstone to his wame, and we gid him hyssop and water of pennyroyal, and fine, clean balsam of sulphur for the host."
"Sir," says I, cutting very quietly in, "there's a friend of mine gone by the house."
"Is that in say?" replies Alan, as though it were a thing of small account, and then, "You were saying, mem?"
says he, and the weariful wife went on. Presently, however, he paid her with a half-crown piece, and she must go forth after the change.
"Was it him with the red head?" asked Alan.
"Ye have it," said I.
"What did I tell you in the wood?" he cried. "And yet it's strange he should be here too. Was he his lane?"
"His lee lane, for what I could see," said I.
"Did he gang by?"
he asked. "Straight by," said I, and looked neither to the right nor left.
"And that's queerer yet," said Alan. "It sticks in my mind, Davy, that we should be stirring. But where to? Dalehead." "This is like old days fairly," cries he.
"There is one big differ, though," said I, "that now we have money in our pockets."
"And another big differ, Mr. Balfour," says he, "that now we have dogs on our tail. They're on the scent. They're in full cry, David. It's a bad business, and be damned to it."
And he sat thinking hard, with a look of his that I knew well.
"I'm saying, look'ee,"
says he, when the good wife returned,
"have ye a back road out of this change house?"
She told him there was, and where it led to.
"Then, sir,"
says he to me,
"I think it will be the shortest road for us. And here's goodbye to ye, my braw woman, and I'll no forget thon of the cinnamon water."
We went out by the way of the woman's kail yard, and up a lane among fields. Alan looked sharply to all sides, and seeing we're in a little hollow place in the country, out of view of men, sat down.
"Now for a council of war, Davy," said he. "But first of all, a bit lesson to ye. Suppose that I had been like you, what would yon old wife have minded of the pair of us, just that we had gone out by the back gate?
And what does she mind now?
A fine, catty, friendly, cracky man, that suffered with the stomach, poor body, and was real ta'en up about the good brother. Oh, man, David, try and learn to have some kind of intelligence."
"I'll try, Alan," said I.
And now for him of the red head, says he. Was he gone fast or slow?
Betwixt and between, said I.
No kind of a hurry about the man, he asked.
Never a sign of it, said I.
Said Allen. It looks queer. We saw nothing of them this morning on the whims. He passed us by, and he doesn't seem to be looking, and yet here he is on our road. Dod, Davy, I begin to take a notion. I think it's no you they're seeking. I think it's me, and I think they can find where they're going.
They can? I asked.
I think Andy Scoville sold me, him or his mate what can come part of the affair, or else Charlie's clerk Callant, which would be a pity too, says Allen. And if you asked me for just my inward private conviction, I think there'll be heads cracked on Gilney sands.
Allen, I cried, if you're at all right, there'll be folk there and to spare. It'll be small service to crack heads.
It would aye be a satisfaction, though, says Allen. But bide a bit, I'm thinking. And thanks to this bonny westland wind, I believe I've still a chance of it. It's this way, Davy. I'm no trysted with men Scogel till the gloaming comes. But, says he, if I can get a bit of wind out of the west, I'll be there long or that, he says, and lie to for ye behind the Isle of Fidra. Now, if your gentry kens the place, they ken the time forby. Do you see me coming, Davy? Thanks to Johnny Cope and other red-coat gomerals, I should ken this country like the back of my hand. And if you're ready for another bit run with Allen Breck, we'll can cast back inshore and come to the seaside again by Dirleton. If the ship's there, we'll try and get on board of her. If she's no there, I'll just have to get back to my weary haystack. But either way of it, I think we'll leave your gentry whistling on their thumbs.
I believe there's some chance in it, said I. Have on with ye, Allen. End of chapter 12.